He said he missed the smell of cornbread and pine cleaner. 2 days later, my late husband's signet ring was replaced with a perfect fake. The safe wasn't forced. Its log claimed a correct code was used at 2:13 in the morning. The only problem, I was in a hospital bed at 2:13 in the morning. My name is Hazel Whitman. I am 61 years old, and for 38 years, I was the senior archivist for the North Lake County Archives. It was a quiet job, organizing the past, making sure nothing was lost to time or neglect. Now I am retired, a widow, living alone in Ashridge, Wisconsin. Late autumn in the Midwest has a specific kind of silence. The trees are bare, the tourists are gone, and the wind off the lake sounds like a whisper. I live in the same ranch-style house my husband and I bought in the 1980s. It's too large for one person. But I've learned to fill the space with routine. I balance my checkbook in a paper ledger every Tuesday. I drink chamomile tea at precisely 9 p.m. I listen to the AM radio, the static, a comforting companion. Last week, my routine was broken. The doorbell rang just as I was settling in with my tea. It was nearly 10. When I opened the door, my son, Gavin, was standing on the porch, illuminated by the yellow light. He's 35, but in that moment, he looked like a boy again. Gavin. My goodness. What's wrong? Hi, Mum, he said. He stepped inside, not waiting for an invitation, and pulled me into a hug. It wasn't a quick hello. He held on, his face buried in my shoulder, and it lasted several seconds too long. It was the hug of a man who was holding himself together by sheer force of will. I missed home, he mumbled into my sweater. He pulled back, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He dropped a heavy duffel bag by the door. I recognized the leather. It was an expensive brand, the kind that costs more than my monthly mortgage payment used to be. It looked out of place next to his story. It's the Kestrel brand studio thing, he said, walking into the kitchen as if he'd been there all day. The contract fell through. It's a whole legal mess. I'm a little tight on cash. Mum, I just need a place to stay for a few days, just to get my head straight. I followed him, pulling my robe tighter. As I got closer, I smelled it. It wasn't his usual soap. It was a sharp, floral perfume, heavy and expensive. It was the scent of a woman who was definitely not his wife. How is Sloane? I asked, keeping my voice level as I checked the kettle. Does she know you're here? Gavin tensed. He picked up a mail circular from the counter and studied it intently. Sloane's fine. She's busy. We're just taking some space. He tossed the circular down. God, this house hasn't changed at all. He was restless. He wouldn't sit. He paced from the kitchen to the den, his expensive shoes tapping on the linoleum. His gaze kept drifting toward the hallway that led to my small home office, the room that used to be my husband's study. You still have that old safe in the study, don't you? He asked, trying to sound casual. My stomach turned. I do. Dad kept all the important stuff in there, right? The house deeds, Grandma's necklace, his old signet ring. I stared at the back of his head. It's just old papers, Gavin, family things. Right, he said, turning back to me, smiling that new, thin smile. I felt a sudden, cold need to protect the room. It's just an old thing. Really. I lied, the words catching awkwardly in my throat. The hinge sticks. It's hard to open these days. Gavin's smile widened, becoming genuine for the first time all night. but it wasn't a comforting expression. Really, you should let me take a look at it while I'm here. It probably just needs some oil. I could fix that for you. Mom? That's not necessary, I said, perhaps too quickly. I barely ever go in it. He let it drop. But the house felt different with him in it. The silence I usually found comforting now felt charged, like the air before a lightning strike. That night, I lay awake in my bed, listening. The house has its own rhythms, the groans of the furnace, the settling of the foundation. But around 3 a.m, I heard a new sound. Footsteps. They were soft, measured, on the hardwood runner in the main hall. They weren't moving toward the kitchen or the bathroom. They were just there. The steps paused. I held my breath. The blanket pulled up to my chin. I could feel the silence on the other side of my door, an active, listening silence. It felt like someone was checking the breathing of the house, making sure everyone was truly asleep. Then, as quietly as they had come, the footsteps retreated. I did not sleep again until the sun came up. The next morning, while Gavin was in the shower, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, a text from a number I didn't recognize. Is he there? I knew instantly it was Sloane. I typed back. Who is this? It's Sloane. Please, Hazel, is he with you? The tone wasn't just accusatory, it was desperate. Before I could reply, another message came. He took the money from our joint account. I closed the message, my hand unsteady. The water upstairs stopped. When Gavin came down, dressed in a fresh, expensive-looking polo shirt, I was stirring oatmeal that I had no intention of eating. Sloane texted, I said, not looking at him. He froze for a second. Yeah. She's a little emotional right now. We're just sorting things out. She said you took money. I moved it, he corrected, his voice hardening. I moved it for an investment. She doesn't understand the crypto market. He grabbed an apple from the bowl on the counter. It's this guy I know, Rafe. He's got an inside track. This whole thing with Kestrel will blow over once this crypto deal pays out. I just need a little runway. Rafe. The name sounded slick, like smooth stones skipping over dark water. At the archives, my job was to organize facts. You learned that everything leaves a trace, a paper trail, as we called it, even if it wasn't on paper. People's lives were just a collection of metadata. I thought about the spare key to the safe. My husband insisted on one. It was sealed in a small plastic bag and buried under 2 inches of gravel at the bottom of the heavy ceramic pot holding my big saguaro cactus. A ridiculous place. But no one ever offered to water that cactus but me. You know, Mom, Gavin said, crunching the apple. You look a little pale. You still have that standing checkup with the cardiologist. Right. The one you always put off. I looked at him. It's on Friday. Why? I'll take you, he said, all magnanimous. My treat? We can grab lunch after? It's the least I can do while I'm crashing here. A cold, clear thought formed in my mind. He wasn't being kind. He was scheduling an opportunity. He needed me out of the house. That would be nice, Gavin, I said, my voice sweet as poison. Thank you. The clinic was cold. A young nurse named Mara, with bright pink streaks in her hair, took my blood pressure. She was kind, efficient, and chatted to fill the silence. This machine is so old, but it's the only one that works right. She laughed, wrapping the cuff around my arm. Oh, I know the feeling, I found myself saying. We have an old safe at home, clunky as anything, but it's built like a tank. My grandpa had one of those, she said, pumping the bulb. Always said the old ones were the best. That evening, I went straight to the study. I turned the brass dial right, left, right, and entered the code. The tumblers clicked, and the heavy door opened with its familiar, satisfying sigh. Everything was in its place. I closed it, spun the dial, and then walked to my bookshelf. I took a small, digital clock I'd bought for $10 at a drugstore and placed it on the shelf directly opposite the safe. I aimed its face toward the keypad and turned on its motion detect recording feature. It was a cheap little thing, but it was a start. My old job taught me the value of documentation. I went to the kitchen and got my digital baking scale, one by one. I took my grandmother's pearl necklace, my husband's ring, and the few other pieces of value from the safe. I wrote down the inventory in my ledger. Then I weighed each item. The signet ring, 12.4 grams. The pearls, 41.9 grams. I laid them out on the dark velvet of their boxes. I took my phone, placed that morning's copy of the Ashridge Chronicle next to them, and I took photos. Clear, bright, time-stamped photos. Later that night, I was reading in the living room when I heard Gavin step outside onto the back patio. The glass door muffled his voice, but I crept closer, my socked feet silent on the rug. He was whispering, but the cold night air carried the words. "Don't worry about her. She'll be gone for hours." A pause. "Thursday night?" "Yeah. No Sloane. It's good." I slipped back to my chair. I opened my household ledger, the one I used for groceries and utility bills. On the line for that day, I wrote one word, Thursday. My late husband had a saying, a rule he lived by from his time in business. "Hazel," he'd told me, "you don't check on trust. It defeats the purpose. But when you find yourself needing to check, you don't ask about trust anymore. You just get the facts." I had my fact. Thursday. The next afternoon, Gavin was gone, supposedly meeting a contact for lunch. 20 minutes later, a car pulled into my driveway. It was Sloane. She was holding a white bakery box, the string cutting into her fingers. When I opened the door, I barely recognized her. The bright, sharp woman I knew was gone. In her place was this exhausted, hollow-eyed person in a wrinkled silk blouse that looked slept in. "I brought a lemon tart," she said, her voice flat. "I know you like them." It wasn't a peace offering. It was a flag of surrender. "Sloane, what's going on?" I said, letting her in. She sat at my kitchen table, the one she'd always claimed was too rustic, and didn't touch the coffee I made her. "He didn't just drain the joint account. Hazel, he cashed out our emergency insurance policy. All of it." I sat down, the weight of the words pressing on my chest. "This Rafe person," she continued, her voice trembling. "He's not a crypto guy. He's a bookie, a loan shark. Gavin's been betting on college sports for months. He's in deep. Hazel. Deeper than I knew." She looked up, her eyes finally meeting mine, and I saw shame. I came here last week, while you were at your garden club." I said nothing. "I was looking for your mortgage papers. I thought maybe he'd tried to borrow against your house. I don't know." Her hands were twisting in her lap. "I went into the study. I tried the safe. I'm so sorry. I couldn't open it. I don't know the code. I thought of my house, my quiet space. Violated. First my son, now his wife. He didn't give it to you. No, she said. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She opened her messages and slid it across the table. It was a screenshot of a text from Gavin. It's the wedding day, +11. A cold shock went through me. My wedding anniversary, July 19th, 0719, +11, 0730. That had been the code for 30 years. But after my husband died, after the quiet of the house became too much, I'd changed it. Just 6 months ago, I'd changed it to the day I was hired at the archives, a date only I would remember. The code Gavin had, the one he'd shared, was now useless. He wants to save our marriage. Hazel, Sloane whispered, pulling her phone back. He's just lost. If we can stop him, if we can just get him away from this Rafe. I looked at this desperate young woman, willing to team up with her mother-in-law to ambush her own husband. Sloane, I said, my voice quiet but firm. My only concern is protecting what's in that room. Don't let anyone humiliate the past any further. She left the tart on the counter when she left. Gavin came home an hour later. He saw the white box. Sloane was here, he asked, his voice neutral. She was... He didn't yell. He didn't ask what we'd talked about. He just nodded, his eyes doing that strange, quick scan of the room. He looked at the mantelpiece, his gaze lingering on the framed photos. 1, 2, 3. He looked at the bookshelf. He was counting things. It's a habit people have when they're disoriented, or when they're checking to see if a hidden camera is still in place. That night, my unease settled into a hard knot. I went into the study. Everything looked normal. But I'm an archivist. I noticed details. On the wooden frame of the window, in the thin layer of dust on the sill, there was a smudge, a perfect outline of 4 fingers, pushing against the glass. The window was locked from the inside. Someone had been leaning in, or trying to get leverage. I went to the front door. I pressed the button on my video doorbell, the one Gavin had installed for me last Christmas, to check the night's recordings. The screen on my phone just showed, "This device is in privacy mode." Someone had to manually set that. I took the old brass key for the study from its hook by the kitchen door. It was a skeleton key, mostly for show, but I locked the door. I felt a small, ridiculous sense of relief. I went to the kitchen to boil water for my tea. I was in there for maybe 5 minutes. When I came back out, I glanced at the hook. The key was there, but it wasn't hanging the way I'd left it. I always hang my keys with the teeth pointing left. This one was pointing right. Someone had been in the study. While I was in the kitchen, my son was upstairs, supposedly on a call. The house was no longer my own. On Wednesday night, the air in the house was thick with unspoken things. Gavin was restless, his Thursday phone call still hanging in my memory. I was sitting in the den, trying to read, when I felt a genuine, sharp tightness in my chest. It wasn't the first time. My doctor had warned me about palpitations. Gavin saw me wince as I pressed my hand to my sternum. His eyes lit up with a terrifying, solicitous energy. "Mum, are you okay? You don't look good." "It's just an old flutter," I managed, breathing slowly. "That's not just anything," he insisted, his voice too loud in the quiet room. "I'm worried. You should go to Silver Pines Medical in the morning. Seriously. Get that full workup you've been avoiding." He was pushing, but he was pushing on a door that was already open. I was scared. "We'll see how I feel," I said. I didn't have to wait. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up feeling cold and dizzy. The room was spinning. I knew the signs: hypoglycemia. I fumbled for the glass of water on my nightstand and missed, sending it crashing to the floor. I tried to stand, to get to the kitchen for juice, but my legs wouldn't hold me. I collapsed in the hallway. Gavin was there in seconds, fully dressed in jeans and a dark hoodie, as if he'd been awake and waiting. "That's it," he said, lifting me easily. "We're going to the emergency room, now." I was too weak to argue. The drive was a blur. At the triage desk of Silver Pines Medical, the fluorescent lights made my headache worse. Gavin was a mask of filial concern, handing the nurse my insurance card, answering her questions. "I'll handle all the paperwork. Mum, you just rest." He took my purse from my lap. "I'll hold on to this. I've got your keys. I'll make sure the house is locked up tight." I nodded weakly, watching him pocket my keychain. They wheeled me into a monitoring bay. A minute later, Mara, the nurse from the clinic, walked in. "Mrs. Whitman, we have to stop meeting like this," she said, offering a small smile. "The doctor wants to hook you up to the EKG, just to be safe. We need to monitor you." I watched the clock on the wall as she attached the sticky sensors to my chest. The red digital numbers read 29 AM. "I just need you to sign the consent for the monitoring," she said, holding out a digital clipboard. My hand was still shaking, but I took the stylus and scrawled Hazel Whitman. As I handed it back, I saw the timestamp flash on the signature line, 2:13 AM. I lay there for what felt like an hour, listening to the steady beep of the machine next to my bed. At 2:45, my phone, which Gavin had left on my bedside table, buzzed. A text from him. "They say you're stable. Thank God. I'm just running home to grab you a warmer jacket and your overnight bag. Be back soon." I just stared at the words. I didn't have the energy to reply. When I was finally discharged hours later, cleared of any cardiac event, Mara was the one who unhooked me. "You were a model patient," she said, peeling off the last sensor. "Barely moved for the first hour. You were sitting bolt upright when I checked the monitor. You have a video?" "Just a remote feed. We check it from the nurse's station." She tapped her tablet. "See, this is the log. There you are. From 2:10 to 2:20. Sitting perfectly still, right after I got your signature." I looked at the grainy, black and white image of myself. My alibi. The house was empty when I returned. I went straight to the study. The cheap clock camera was where I'd left it, but the battery was dead. Useless. When Gavin returned that evening, I was in the kitchen, heating up soup. I smiled at him, my muscles tight. "How was your day?" "I'm feeling much better. Just a little tired." "Good, good," he said, avoiding my eyes as he headed upstairs. "Glad you're home, Mum. You really scared me." I nodded, stirring the soup. "You were wonderful. Thank you for taking care of me." While he was showering, I walked into the study. The air was still. The room was pristinely undisturbed, which is exactly what made it feel wrong. It was too clean, too perfect. No papers were askew. The chair was pushed in just right. It felt like a stage, set for an audience of one. I went to the safe. My new code worked, just as the old one had for Gavin. The heavy door swung open. At first glance, Everything was there. The box with my husband's signet ring, my grandmother's pearls, the stack of deeds and bonds. I felt a wave of dizzying relief. What if I had imagined it all? Then I picked up the ring. It looked right. The family crest, the small worn spot on the band where my husband used to rub it with his thumb. I slipped it onto my finger, expecting the familiar, solid weight. It was there. But as I held it in my palm, the metal, warmed by my skin, cooled almost instantly. Solid gold holds its warmth. New plating over cheap metal sheds it like a lie. My heart hammered. I opened the velvet case for the pearls. The luster was close, but not quite right. I ran my fingers along the strand, and I found it. The original necklace was knotted on a single, unbroken silk thread. This one had a small, uneven, modern clasp near one of the pearls, a tiny join in the thread that was coarse and new. A copy. A good one. But a copy. I looked through the papers. The land deeds, the old savings bonds, my husband's discharge papers. They were all there. The thief hadn't wanted things that were complicated to liquidate. They had wanted the story, the history, the items that could be sold quickly and quietly. I put the fake jewelry back and closed the safe. I was no longer a victim. I was an archivist, cataloguing a forgery. I began to scan the room, not as a homeowner, but as an investigator. I looked at the baseboards, the outlets. Behind the heavy oak desk, plugged into the socket I never used, was a small, white plastic square. It wasn't mine. A mini Wi-Fi repeater. A bridge. A way for someone to access the digital log of my safe from a laptop in the driveway. My hands were steady. I walked to the large saguaro cactus by the window. I plunged my hand into the decorative gravel at its base. My fingers brushed against the small, sealed plastic bag. I pulled it out. The spare key was inside, but it wasn't my spare key. The original was heavy, cold brass. This was dull, grey plastic. It had the faint, striated lines and the slightly grainy texture of a three-dimensional printer. It smelled faintly of burnt chemicals, not of metal and oil. He hadn't just found the key. He had taken it, copied it, and replaced it, all without me knowing. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was a plan. When Gavin came down for dinner, I smiled and ladled his soup. "I hope you're hungry." "Starving," he said, sitting down. I sat across from him, watching him eat. My eyes drifted to his expensive leather duffel bag, which he'd left by the door. On the heavy brass clasp of the main zipper, there was a fresh, deep scratch, as if it had recently been forced or jimmied. "Gavin," I said, my voice soft. "I'm going to need you to be honest with me about Sloane." He looked up, wary. "What about her?" "I just don't want any more drama while you're here. This episode with my heart. I need quiet." "Of course. Mum, whatever you need." "Good," I said. Later. I went to my room and called Sloane. "He's here," I said, cutting her off before she could speak. "Listen to me. I need you to stay away from the house. Do not text. Do not call me. You coming here gives him an excuse. He'll use you to muddy the water. Do you understand?" There was a silence, then a small, "Yes." "I am handling this," I said, and hung up. I opened my closet and found an old, manila envelope. I wrote "Insurance Appraisals, 2024" on the front in my clearest handwriting. Inside, I placed a single, tile-sized object I had ordered last month after my neighbor's car was stolen. I activated the AirTag, connecting it to my phone. I slid the envelope onto the corner of my desk, just visible enough for someone who was looking for it. A decoy, a beacon, a breadcrumb for him to follow, and for me to trace. The next morning, I told Gavin I was going to my garden club meeting. Instead, I drove to Ashridge Bank. I didn't go to the teller line. I had an appointment with Dina Park, the branch manager. Dina is a sharp woman in her 40s who has managed my accounts for a decade. "Hazel," she said, closing the glass door to her office. "You sounded urgent on the phone." "I need to lock access to my safe deposit box, Dina. Effective immediately. Signature access only, no exceptions. And I want to be the only signature." Dina's professional smile tightened. "Is everything all right? Your son is listed on that account as well." "That is why I am here," I said. "And I need you to document everything that is currently in the box. Photograph the serial numbers on the bonds. I need a record." She nodded, her expression shifting from polite to concerned. "Of course. Immediately. One more thing." I slid a folded, yellowed piece of paper across her desk. It was the original insured invoice for my husband's ring from 1981. "This is from Orchard and Pike, the jewelers downtown. Can you verify this serial number against their records? I need to know the exact provenance." "Orchard and Pike." "Yes. I know the owner. I'll make a call." "Hazel, what's happening?" "Someone is forging my history. Dina, I'm just making a new copy." My next stop was an office supply store. I bought a small digital voice recorder shaped like an expensive fountain pen. Then I went to a hardware store and bought a small, fireproof locking box. A safe for my safe. A trap within a trap. That evening, I made Gavin his favourite meal pot roast, the way my mother used to make it. I was warm. I was nostalgic. I told him stories about his father, about the day he was born. I saw his eyes fill with genuine tears. He was moved. He was also, I realised, incredibly easy to move. "I'm so glad you're here, Mum," he said, his voice thick. "I've really missed this." "I've missed you, too, Gavin," I said. After dinner, he excused himself. "I just need to make a call in the study," he said. He was in there for over 20 minutes. I sat at the kitchen table, watching my phone. At 9:15, it happened. The Find My app lit up. The manila envelope, my decoy, was on the move. I watched the little dot travel down my street, turn onto Main, and stop. It settled on a red-roofed building on the bad side of town, the Red Kettle Bar. The place, as rumour had it, where Rafe held court. My son hadn't just looked in the study. He had stolen the envelope, thinking it was valuable. The next day was busy. I went to Silver Pines and got a certified copy of my discharge papers, the ones showing my arrival at the ER. I charmed a secretary into giving me a copy of the security log for the monitoring bay. Time-stamped. My alibi was now notarized. I drove downtown to Orchard and Pike. An elderly man with a jeweler's loop screwed into his eye socket looked at the fake ring on my finger. He didn't even need to weigh it. "I've been in this business for 50 years, Mrs. Whitman. This is a good fake. The crest is well molded, but it's plated brass. Your husband's ring was 22-carat gold. This is off-weight by at least 0.9 grams. Where did you get this?" "I'm an archivist," I said, sliding the ring off my finger and leaving it on his counter. "I'm just documenting an error in the collection." That afternoon, I met with Nora Langford, my lawyer. Nora is all sharp angles and sharper suits. I laid it all out, the fakes, the log, the 3D printed key, the hospital alibi, the AirTag pinging at the red kettle. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back. He's good. The hospital alibi is smart. He created a perfect, verifiable window where you were incapacitated and he had your keys, all while being a hero. A jury would eat that up. So I call the police, I said. No, Nora said, tapping her pen. You don't. Right now. It's your word against his. He'll say you're a grieving, confused old woman. He'll say you gave him the jewelry to help him. You're the one who found the clumsy fake. No, we don't have enough. You're an archivist. Hazel, you need a complete file. We need to catch him in a repeat action. We have to bait the trap again. And this time, we make sure it closes. That night, I set the new trap. I took the small, metal safe box I'd bought and placed it inside my large study safe. I found an old, gaudy ring box from a costume piece. I put it inside the mini-safe. And inside the ring box, I placed a small, folded piece of my personal stationery. On it, I wrote 3 words. If you open this, I know. The next evening, I brought it up. I didn't confront him. I presented a problem to be solved. Gavin, I said, as we were clearing the dinner plates, I'm worried about security. After my spell at the hospital, I'm thinking of changing the code on the safe. He stopped, a plate halfway to the sink. What? Why? It's an old code, I said, my voice mild. It's probably best to update it. His reaction was immediate and volcanic. You don't trust me, I'm here. I'm taking care of you. I rushed you to the hospital. And this is what I get. This isn't about trust, Gavin. This is about... It's always about trust. Mom, he snapped. You still think I'm that kid who stole $20 from your purse in high school, don't you? I think you're in trouble, I said, my voice dropping. I know about the gambling, Gavin. I know about Rafe. The anger vanished, replaced by a sullen, childish fear. He sat down heavily at the table. It's not what you think. I got in over my head. It was a bad tip on a game. Rafe is helping me sort it out. I just needed some collateral to show good faith. I'm going to pay it all back. I promise. Mom, I'll pay you back. Pay me back for what? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. He flinched. For the money I owe. I needed to borrow it. Borrow what the fake ring, the fake pearls. His head snapped up, his face pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I just borrowed some cash from my own account. He was a terrible liar. He was my son, and he was a stranger. The spare key to the house. Gavin, I said, shifting tactics. The one you used? Who else could have made a copy of it? This Rafe. No one. I have my key. He blustered. Mum, you're not making any sense. You're tired from the hospital. I'm changing the code tomorrow, I said, picking up the last plate. Trust and protecting your father's things are 2 very different jobs. Gavin, I'm capable of doing both. He stormed upstairs. Later that night, as I sat in the living room, I heard the faint bloop-bloop of a notification from his room. It wasn't the normal text message sound. It was the distinct chime of an encrypted messaging app, like Signal. Someone was communicating securely. My own phone vibrated. A voice message. From Sloane. Hazel, please. I know you told me not to call, but he's in worse trouble than I said. This Rafe guy, he's not just a bookie. He's bad. Don't let Gavin meet him anymore. Please. He doesn't understand who he's dealing with. Her voice was raw with fear. And it was my proof. She wasn't a co-conspirator. She was just another person my son was failing. I looked at the Find My app, the AirTag, which I had left in the manila envelope for him to find, and which he had clearly returned to the study, was on the move again. He must have taken it again, thinking it held more insurance papers. This time, the dot wasn't at the Red Kettle. It was moving toward the old industrial park. It stopped at a long, dark building, the abandoned Foster Mill. I grabbed my keys and was out the door in 30 seconds. I parked my car 2 streets away and walked, keeping to the shadows. The mill was a dark monolith against the sky. There was one vehicle parked in the back, near a loading dock, a silver, mud-splattered pickup truck. Rafe's. A single, high-intensity motion sensor light was on above the loading dock door. As I watched from behind a chain-link fence, the light clicked off. Someone had just gone inside, or just come out. My instinct, a primal, motherly urge, was to run in there, to pull my son out by his ear. But Nora's voice was in my head. We need a repeat action. I was an archivist. I was gathering data. I raised my phone. I braced it on the fence post to keep it steady in the dark. I zoomed in on the silver truck's license plate. The flash was off. I took 3 clear photos. I sent the best one in a text to 2 people, Nora, my lawyer, and Dina, my bank manager. My message was the same for both. This is the vehicle belonging to the man my son is involved with, parked at Foster Mill. I have reason to believe he is fencing stolen jewelry. Please check this against your fraud databases. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked back to my car, my hands perfectly steady. When I got home, I went to the front porch. I opened the housing of my video doorbell and quietly removed the battery pack. The little blue light died. To any thief, it would look like a malfunction, a dead battery, a blind spot, a perfect opportunity. Then I went to my study. I took the new, high-definition micro camera. I had bought the one that looked like a USB charger and plugged it into the wall socket in the air conditioning vent. High on the wall. It had a perfect, downward-facing view of the safe. Finally, I opened the safe. I left the fake jewelry. I left the small, locked box. And right on top of the velvet case holding the fake ring, I placed a folded sheet of my best cream-colored stationery. I wrote 4 words this time. Don't do this again. The second Thursday, the one Gavin had been waiting for. I spent the day performing. I acted tired, frail, and frightened. I told Gavin I was worried about being in the house alone after my spell. I'm going to stay with my sister, I told him. My voice pitched to sound weak. Just for the night? I need a break. He was a mask of concern. Of course, Mum, that's a great idea. You need to rest. He helped me pack my overnight bag, his relief so palpable it was practically vibrating. I left at 7 p.m. I drove to the 24-hour diner on the edge of town, 3 blocks from my house. I parked, went inside, and took a booth at the very back, the one with a clear view of the door, but where no one could see my face. I ordered a black coffee and opened 2 apps on my phone, the live feed from the camera in the air vent, and the Find My app tracking my AirTag. I waited. The diner was quiet. The house on my screen was dark, save for the living room lamp I had programmed to turn on at 9:158 a.m. The feed from the vent camera clicked to life. The sensor had detected motion. The study door creaked open. I leaned closer to my phone screen. 2 people. One was Gavin, his shoulders hunched, his hands shaking. The other was shorter, quicker, dressed in dark clothing, their face hidden by a baseball cap pulled low. It wasn't the large man I'd seen at the mill. This was someone else. "I don't like this," Gavin whispered. The audio was tinny, but sharp. "Shut up," the second person hissed. They pushed past Gavin and went straight to the safe. They didn't hesitate. They entered the code, the new one, the one I had set after my hospital stay. They must have been watching, waiting, using that Wi-Fi bridge to capture the new keystrokes. 206 The heavy door swung open. The second person shone a small flashlight inside. They saw the crumpled note I had left last time, "Don't do this again," and swatted it away. They saw the fakes. "This is it," the person snapped. "I told you," Gavin pleaded. "It's just old papers and—" "What's this?" The light landed on the new, small, black metal box. The trap. The person pulled it out. More. I've never seen that before. They didn't waste time on the lock. They took a small pry bar from their pocket and snapped the cheap hasp in 2 seconds. They flipped the lid, revealing the gaudy velvet ring box. They opened it. Inside, there was only the folded piece of stationery. They read the note. "If you open this, I know." For a full 3 seconds, there was absolute silence in the study. Then, the second person let out a string of sharp, vicious curses. "She knows she's been playing you, you goddamn idiot!" They threw the box against the wall. Rafe, hurry up!" the person yelled, their voice no longer a whisper. "We're out." She set us up. The name. I had the name, on audio, linked to the crime. I watched them grab the fake jewelry, still worth something, I supposed, and the manila envelope with the AirTag. They ran from the room. I switched to my other app, the Find My screen. The dot was moving. It left my house. It sped down my street, heading for the industrial park. It didn't stop. It went straight to the Foster Mill and stopped inside the building's footprint. I put my phone down. My coffee was cold. My hands were perfectly steady. I made 2 calls. The first was to Nora. "They're at the mill. I have the video. I have audio of the name. The AirTag is live at the warehouse." "Stay put," Nora commanded. "I'm calling Chief Hale. Don't move." I hung up and called the Ashridge Police Dispatch. "This is Hazel Whitman. I am reporting a burglary. The suspects have just fled my home and are at the Foster Mill warehouse. I have live video, audio, and GPS tracking. My lawyer, Nora Langford, is contacting Chief Hale now. The lead suspect is Rafe, who has an outstanding warrant." I gave them the warrant number Nora had found for me. That was the key. A minute later, my phone rang. Chief Dorian Hale. "Hazel, I'm looking at the tracking. I've got a patrol car 5 blocks from the mill. That warrant for Rafe is active. We are going in. I need you to stay exactly where you are. Do not leave that diner." "I won't," I said. My phone buzzed again. A text message. From Gavin. "Mom, where are you?" He was scared. He was in the trap, and it was closing. He was reaching for his alibi, his frail, sick mother. I typed my reply. I'm at the diner on Main Street, where the waitress just refilled my coffee and the security cameras can see me. I sat back. At 3:05 in the morning, my phone rang. It was Dorian. We have them. Hazel. We've got Rafe and 2 others. They were in the office, with the fakes and a few other items. We found your husband's ring, the real one, and a strand of pearls. Also, a laptop and a key copying machine. It's over. I closed my eyes. Gavin. He wasn't here. Looks like they dropped him off. But we have him on your video. We need you to come down to the station. I'm on my way, I said. I left a $10 bill on the table and walked out into the cold. The police station at 4 in the morning is a place outside of time. The lights are too bright. The air smells of stale coffee and disinfectant. I sat in a small, hard chair in Chief Hale's office. Nora stood beside me, a fortress in a business suit. They brought Rafe past the door first, his hands cuffed behind him. He was a small, wiry man with colourless eyes. I was just holding it for him, he muttered to the officer, jerking his chin toward the interview room. Just holding it. Then they brought my son. Gavin wasn't cuffed. He was a person of interest, a witness. He was slumped in a chair in the glass-walled interview room, staring at his hands. Chief Hale came back into his office, closing the door. He's talking, Hale said, rubbing his eyes. The story is already changing. He says Rafe promised to clear his gambling debt if he could provide collateral. He admits he gave Rafe the old safe code, the one that didn't work. He's trying to pin the rest on him. He claims he thought I wouldn't notice, that he'd replace the items before I ever knew they were gone. He's lying, I said, my voice flat. I know, Hale said. And we know about the second break-in, but without your testimony. Hazel. He's just a scared son who got mixed up with a bad crowd. Then let's give him my testimony, I said. Nora and I walked into the interview room. Gavin looked up, his eyes red. When he saw me, his face crumpled with a horrible, selfish relief. Mum, thank God. Tell them I wouldn't. That Rafe. I didn't sit. I stood on the other side of the table and placed my evidence file in the center. Here, I said, my voice clear and cold. Here is the notarized copy of my hospital admission, time-stamped at 2:13 in the morning, proving my alibi. Here is the jeweler's invoice from Orchard and Pike, confirming the weight and carat of the original ring. Here is the link to the video from the air vent, showing my son entering my home at 1:58 Shea with an accomplice. Here is the audio file, where he calls that accomplice Rafe. And here, I slid my phone across the table, is the live GPS track from the AirTag, placing my property at the Foster Mill, where you found it. Gavin stared at the pile, then at me. Chief Hale leaned against the doorframe. Internal codes. A 3D printed key copied from a hidden spare. A plan to get your mother to the hospital. This wasn't a stranger. Gavin. This was you. Gavin put his head in his hands. He didn't speak. You didn't steal from me, I said, the words cutting through the small room. You stole from your father. You stole his ring, the one he was so proud to give you one day. And you stole from the boy you used to be, the one who knew the difference between right and wrong. The door opened again. It was Sloane. She looked even more exhausted than before, but her spine was straight. She wasn't looking at Gavin. She was looking at Nora. I have what you asked for, Sloane said. She placed a folded legal document on the table. Our separation agreement. I signed it 2 days ago. I was waiting. Then she held up her phone, showing the screen to Chief Hale. It was a text message from Gavin, sent the day he arrived at my house. Can't talk. Sloane is flipping out. We'll deal with Mom's safe later. Gavin finally looked up. Sloane. No. I was trying to fix... You were what? Gavin, she asked, her voice dead. Fixing it. I was desperate, he finally yelled, his voice cracking. You don't understand. He was going to... I was desperate. I looked at my son, this 35-year-old man, and I felt nothing but a profound, aching emptiness. Desperation doesn't change the locks on morality. Gavin, it just shows you where they were set in the first place. Nora stepped forward. All business. This is the one and only offer. Gavin, she said, you will accept the charges. You will turn over the name of every person in Rafe's network. You will identify the person who was with you in that video. You will cooperate fully to retrieve every single item you have already sold. If you do that, all of that, your mother will ask the DA to consider probation. If you refuse, if you lie one more time, she will press for the maximum sentence, and she will get it. The dam broke. Gavin dissolved, not into remorse, but into a messy, terrified sob. He looked at me, his face blotchy, reverting to the child who always got caught. Mummy, please. You can fix this. You can still save me. Please. I looked at him, at the ruins of the man I had raised. I'm going to save the truth, I said, picking up my phone. You have to save yourself. The preliminary hearing was not a trial. It was an arraignment of facts. The prosecutor, a young woman with an efficient, clipped voice, accepted Nora's proposed plea agreement. Gavin would plead guilty to conspiracy, cooperate fully in the case against Rafe, and identify the buyers of the stolen items. Rafe, who had a long sheet of prior offences, was facing a much heavier set of charges. The judge, a woman with tired, intelligent eyes, looked at me. Mrs. Whitman, you have the right to make a victim's statement. Would you like to do so? I would, Your Honour, I said. Nora handed me a single folded paper. I walked to the podium. Gavin sat at the defendant's table, his face ashen. He would not look at me. I am not here to speak of my feelings, I began, my voice clear in the quiet room. My feelings are a private matter. I am here as an archivist. My job, for 38 years, was to protect the record. I am here to present a record. I read from my paper. I listed the date my son arrived, the date of my hospital admission, with the corresponding timestamp of 2:13 in the morning, the date of the forged ring's discovery, the date of the second, staged break-in. I detailed the 3D printed key, the Wi-Fi bridge, the faked illness. I read it not as a mother, but as a coroner reading an autopsy report. The value of the items taken is secondary, I said. The primary cost was of the truth, the technical skill used to stage an alibi, to copy a key, to replace history with a forgery that is the evidence I present. I looked at the prosecutor. I have one final piece of evidence. Nora nodded. I reached into my pocket and took out the pen-shaped recorder. I pressed play. My voice, small and thin, filled the courtroom's speakers. Don't do this again. Then, a moment of silence. And finally, Gavin's voice, a clear, sharp whisper. Don't turn on the light. Mum's used to walking in the dark. Gavin winced. A sound like air escaping a tire. I turned off the recorder. I reached into my other pocket. I took out my husband's signet ring, the real one, recovered from the mill, now officially evidence. I walked to the evidence table and placed it on the glass surface. The sound of solid gold hitting the table was small, but it was as loud and final as a hammer. I turned, and I looked at my son. I looked at him for the first time. When you said you missed home, Gavin, you thought home was the collection of items in that safe. You were wrong. Home is the person who knows, without question, when it is time to lock the door. I returned to my seat. The judge looked at Gavin, her expression unreadable. This court approves the plea agreement. I am also granting Mrs. Whitman's request for a permanent restraining order on all her assets, bank accounts, and property. Mr. Whitman, you are to have no access. Mrs. Whitman is granted full and sole authority to change all locks, all codes, and all access, effective immediately. All prior powers of attorney or medical directives are hereby revoked. The gavel struck. It was done. Gavin stood up, his face desperate. He took a step toward me. Mum. Chief Hale, who had been standing by the wall, stepped in his path. A simple, blocking movement. Nora slid a stack of papers in front of me, the legal forms to revoke the authorizations I had signed years ago when I thought my son was my protector. I picked up the pen and signed my name, my hand steady. Gavin was still talking, his voice a low, pleading mumble, but I didn't listen. I signed the last page. Nora leaned in, her voice a low whisper. Do you want to say anything else to him? Hazel. I pushed the papers back toward her. No, I said. That's enough. I stood up and walked toward the exit, Nora beside me. I did not look back. As I reached the heavy oak doors, I pushed one open. It closed behind me, not with a slam, but with a quiet, final click of a well-oiled hinge settling perfectly into its frame. The sound was definitive. I walked out into the bright, cold hallway. I reached into my pocket, and my fingers closed around my new house key. It was a small, sharp piece of metal, but it was enough to keep a life secure. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm so curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Please let me know in the comments and share any of your own thoughts. I'd love to connect. Please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, and if this story resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd like the video and hit that hype button so it can be heard by others.